one person to compliment, actually the other person.
Oh, okay.
Hi. Long time no see. Haven't seen you in a long time. Good, how have you
You're doing in
been?
the second row there.
I know there's some legends going on out here, so.
This post, I need to make this thing on Facebook.
Is there a munis link up there?
Would it be possible, would I give within my rights to read it as a comment, the negative influence of Facebook? Because he, in fact, says it's.
Levi,
said-
thank you for your interview with my students.
And,
You,
you know.
no, I don't send them to you. They
misinformation,
are just
tendency of people to ruin
funneled to you.
echo chambers. Okay, if I can get it.
Your comments were good, but the way they had you framed made you look like you were on a mantle.
Bad about how all this is going down.
So if you like to read novels and are interested in the way in which text is the internet.
Well, you see, you know what's funny is that when they show them, they get really,
The
they
dumbing
get
down
afraid
of
because
society, you
I'll
might
say
like
something
it.
like,
I'll
and
send
how
you
many
the
times did it take you to do this interview?
titles.
You heard.
Young adults.
So Richard is sending the budget reports to Beth so that they can be broadcast up here while these guys are talking about their budgets, okay? So I forgot to ask that.
Council McFarland, it can't be here tonight, so you're not waiting for anybody.
You're waiting for me. I'm not ready. Are we ready? Okay, I'd like to call to order our Public Safety Committee meeting for October 24th. Roll call.
Counselor Gibbs,
Here.
Counselor Ensel,
Here.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Armstrong.
Here.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor McFarland, Counselor Moore.
Okay, item 1, reports from department representatives and discussion with counselors. So this is going to be number 1, holding the 2020 budget session with police and fire. So Richard is sending up the information to Beth so we can broadcast it up here. I don't know which either one of you wants to go first, doesn't matter.
I'll go first.
Okay. So we met yesterday for 3 hours and talked extensively about expenses, overtime, revenue, the whole bit. There's going to be a few changes in the budget based on our discussion last night. So,
Do we have a narrative?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, give me the-
All right.
okay, thank you. Yep, there it is.
I got it. I'm pretty sure it's in here. There we go.
Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're
Would you just like to ask questions?
No, go ahead and present whatever you want to.
I mean,
Yeah, for the benefit of the public, it's always good to just kind of summarize.
You just do the highlights. You just-
So I'll just go into the budget narrative that you asked me to prepare. Number 1 was analyze the positive and negatives of implementing the 2019 budget. So I wrote, implementing a forced reduction in operating expenses is always challenging. As a result, we have found diminished returns in some expense lines and opportunities in others. Weighing those both against the goals and objectives of this police department is a lengthy process, which I'm sure everyone can appreciate, as is the entire city. Several years into this exercise, we have come a long way in terms of reduced spending. Over the course of 5 years, our budget has been reduced by 9.9%. So I went back just to educate myself on the history, at least going back 5 years for the police budget, both in the payroll and the total adopted budget year for year. And, you know, it looked like even back in 2015, there was a realization that there was a need for reduced spending. And by the numbers that I was able to find, it looks like the police department has consistently tried to accommodate that and do its best in terms of finding savings, reducing spending in every category. Most notably the payroll line being the largest. And then going into comparing the 2019 budget to the mayor's budget for 2020, there are a number of changes, but only a couple categories that have a marked difference that will be challenges to try and work through. Some increases in some other areas, but mostly just reevaluating all the budget lines as they exist and finding if we're spending in the right line for the category. So you'll see some reductions in some areas and increases in the others, some just rounding off to make it a more of an easier to look at budget in total.
That's great, thank you.
And then lastly, analyze personnel payroll increases or decreases as they impact the budget and departmental services. So one of the things that I did want to highlight was the inability to attract personnel into our 2 vacant lieutenant positions. It creates a condition where lack of oversight is taking place. The quote-unquote span of control is an important function to a paramilitary organization, and the absence of it is a high cause for concern. So in speaking about the budget in total, I'd be remiss if I didn't include that there are some operational concerns that I wanted to highlight, which we spoke about at length.
Why don't you elucidate on that conversation for the full council so that they know what we talked about yesterday and about why the lieutenant positions are important and why they're not being filled. So, and also for the public as well. So.
Okay. So first, why they're important. When I took over, when I was promoted to chief, so Lieutenant Keroy and I were promoted to chief and captain respectively. But at the same time, those 2 lieutenant positions became vacant. And there was a process of going to a level 4 manager at that point, which the question marks that were raised by that, and it being a new position or a new level of management, it really scared off the people that we would have normally attracted into those lieutenant positions by virtue of promotion. So what has happened over the last 1.5 years plus is that Captain Keroy and I have performed 2 roles each. And just very simply, things get missed because both of our jobs are incredibly important, but to ask us to do another incredibly important job, only so many things are going to be accomplished, and we have to daily evaluate what's the important thing that we must do this day or this week, depending on the conditions that exist. We do our absolute best, but some things get missed. One of those things is just oversight. So through this exercise and looking at where overtime is being spent specifically, because it's one of the easiest things to kind of judge, there was a red flag that I discovered in terms of the amount of hours that are tracked in sick leave coverage. So the amount of money being spent to fill a position that is below a staffing level to provide the adequate services. So I had to go back, again, as far back as I could in our record-keeping system, and it was about 5 years. And it stays at a pretty even number. And then it more than doubles this year. And I'm not a doctor, but I can only assume that things aren't being enforced as they would normally during those periods where we did have lieutenants. And some things are being missed. You know, we're leaking in areas where we would normally not have leaked because it's difficult to monitor all those things.
So you haven't had any lieutenants since you and Captain Keroy came out of that position, so no one has been filled since then?
Correct.
How long has that been, about a year and a half?
Since April of 2018.
But you said there was something to the effect that there was some anxiety about the level 4 designation, but that was not changed, so.
That's a great point. There does exist the interpretation of what the salary would even be and what benefits they would even be given.
And as a level 3 manager?
See, so now we're getting into the crux of the reason why, is
Right.
that there is no clear explanation of what we're even offering to them. Because there's a level of perception based on a number of documents that exist.
Yeah, well, but the last time that was changed, there were only changes to level 3 management that were actually at perks, as I recall. So I would suggest revisiting those documents that were passed sometime in the latter part of 2018.
They're all in the employee handbook.
Yeah.
So I have. One of the major issues is the pay scale that exists on this level 3 manager document. That it's not consistent with the pay scale that they would be promoted from.
Oh, I see.
So-
There's always that difficulty when coming from the ranks of the union, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, so it would be an arbitrary
Yeah.
placement into a different pay scale.
I can remember talking to, remember Ann Chase?
I do.
Yeah, and she always talked about how, you know, it was a difficult decision, and that often that the motivation to go to management was almost transcended that of, you know, the pay scale issues because of the interest in leadership and the interest in, you know, being at that level, just having that kind of contribution to the force. That was her, you know, I remember that was kind of an interesting perspective, and I'm not sure how you guys feel about it, but from the perspective of someone who's in human resources, that was the way she expressed it. Yeah.
I know, Chief, yesterday in our meeting, we addressed the issue in regard to the dispatcher, where you currently have 3 dispatchers, and you also have a patrol officer serving as a dispatcher on
Correct.
some occasion. I know Elizabeth and I, as members of the Public Safety Commission, are actually recommending that an additional dispatcher position be put into the budget and filled, so that you would have 4 dispatchers, and then the patrol officer would actually go back onto the street and provide. Does that help alleviate some of the problems that you're currently facing as far as staffing, and would that help to address some of the overtime?
It's hard to know how much. It certainly does. To what extent, it'd be hard for me to give a value. But yes, it would be a positive value.
So we talked about that last night, but I also recall that you said that the salary is already in the budget for that? I forget how you worded it.
So we had
It would not create an impact, it would not impact the actual total budget because there's a line in there that hasn't been filled.
So we
Okay,
had
so
a,
that's an important distinction for tonight.
yes.
Okay, so that everyone's clear on that, because we felt that, this is something we've been talking about since the summertime, that an officer, a trained officer is better served out in force than being at dispatch, especially since you have cadets coming through. And you're going to need, experienced officers as well as your cadets, so.
So I mean, there's always an argument for and against, but the argument for I would say is the 0 to ready factor is far less with a dispatcher than it is with a police officer, where a police officer has to be hired in anticipation of a police academy that takes 6 months, at least 3 months of field training, and then arguably it takes like another year to really have a grasp on their role. Whereas, and no disrespect to dispatchers, but the learning curve is far less because their role is very different, and it's just very different. So there's no academy for a dispatcher. There's a level of training and field training that exists, but it is so much more condensed because, you know, operationally they're very different.
Mhm.
They make less. They pay more in their benefits. They aren't in the same retirement system. There are a number of financial reasons that it does make sense.
Mhm. Okay. Do we want to talk about the actual budget?
You wanna look at the numbers?
Yeah, let's look at the numbers. So part of the conversation we had last night was about overtime, and we talked about bringing overtime down, so it's reduced from the originally proposed budget of 319 down to 266.
So that's the revised number from last night's discussion.
Right.
there. So there's a total proper police budget, and I believe it's come down from 4,000,000 roughly 81,000 down to 4,027,000. The line item you were talking about for salaries and wages is right here.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I can't get to my files that shows you the detail of how many positions that is and any vacancies and so forth that are budgeted for. But according to the chief, he says that there is an officer vacant position budgeted for there.
Correct.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
There is a vacant officer position budgeted in that 3,271,000. That's right on that line. Slightly lower than what was budgeted in 2019. And I believe that's because of transitional issues from higher paid people retiring and lower paid people being budgeted for.
Do you anticipate retirements this year? 2020, I mean?
Not much, only 27,250 is budgeted for separation pay.
What's the mayor's budget usually in there? Where is that going?
I don't know for certain.
Okay.
There are some eligibles, yes.
But you don't know for sure if
I don't have any commitments, but there are some people that are eligible.
One difference in the overall budget is you see there's nothing budgeted for traffic violations. Because that cost is all being budgeted for in the parking fund, fund number 3, as an offset to the additional revenue that's anticipated in the parking fund from the new parking fees and permits.
Where is asset forfeiture in here?
Right here.
Should be towards the
Asset
end.
seizure.
There's nothing on the first line of the asset seizure budget for office equipment. And this is what's budgeted for asset seizure spending. Now, that all comes from the reserve account. That's reserve cash that's already established in a bank account. So the exact amount of spending is also budgeted for in the revenue, so it has no impact on the tax levy.
Okay.
And it's not actually a budgeted item, although it's required to be budgeted, so that we know what's gonna be spent, but we offset it with the same amount of anticipated
Right.
revenue. Of course, the revenue and the spending never come out the same, but, you know, it's just from a budget perspective to keep it level so that there's no impact on the property tax levy.
Is asset forfeiture allowed to be accumulated and carried over year to year if there is any reserve?
It's just an account.
Right.
So it's,
Yeah.
forgive me if I'm speaking.
you're right.
It makes sense from the Chamberlain's view to have it in a budget and so it tracks correctly, but it's a separate deal.
It's a separate
entirely.
account that
It's,
whatever gets contributed, it's in the pool, you're allowed to spend out of it.
yeah, it doesn't even enter into.
And it can fluctuate greatly year to year based upon what the forfeitures are.
Correct.
There's currently 200,000 in cash in that reserve.
Mhm.
You see
And-
there's only budget for 98,000 to be spent, or 92,000 to be spent next year.
The satellite office on Margaret Street, how is that going to be paid for? I saw it in the paper, but I can't remember what I read.
So it's on the agenda tonight. It is going to be, so there are gonna be some,
Oh, yeah, I did see that. State grant.
yep, so there are gonna be some enhancements that there's going to be a peer recovery coach and a mental health clinician operating out of that, approximately 35 hours a week. So the services that are gonna be provided are in conjunction with what we're providing, but it's going to be funded by a state grant through Clinton County Community Services.
Chief, how is it funded when an officer or a detective or someone needs to travel out of state to bring back a suspect or a fugitive or something? Does that come out of our budget or is that?
No, so, I would say there are some exceptions and they're very nominal, but the bulk of that travel, when we're talking about a fugitive in another state, that's funded by the DA's office. So it's, we pay for the cost of the person if it does incur overtime because it's kind of crazy hours, but the travel expenses are paid by the DA's office because it's recovering a.
But we're paying the payroll.
Correct.
Does anybody else have questions?
That asset forfeiture revenue is budgeted on these two lines, 15,000, 77,000. Of course, that adds up to 92,000 that's down on these multiple lines. So that's where it offsets in the revenue side. The top part of this report is the police revenues. See, the police fees are tracking really well against what was originally budgeted and what's revised. This is where the police gets reimbursed for their costs for the officers in the school system, for charges that come back to us through the court system, and various other things. And here's fines and forfeitures. Those are actually fines that are being collected by the city court and paid to the city. Parking violations. You see this revenue isn't budgeted there next year. Once again, it's going into the parking fund to offset the cost for the parking enforcement officer. Stop DWI, and we're still waiting for the border patrol, consolidated border patrol reimbursement. We didn't get one last year. I don't know if we're gonna get one this year again, so the chief will update us on that.
Not aware of any.
Here's the actual forfeiture crime proceeds this year, 57,540 and 14,837 versus, so that's about what, 71,000?
72, close to 72.
Okay, call it 72, and then the actual spending for the asset forfeiture is only 23. Year to date, so far.
And we are definitely restricted as to what that money can be used for.
Yes. But there was something that we had, the typical cycle of the the forfeiture reimbursement or disbursement, I think we got a sizable award. Yeah, I want to say it was back to 2015. So these sit in the system for a long, long time. And there are dozens still sitting in there right now, so they come when they come. And they're split how they're split. But yeah, I hadn't seen one that big in a while. Maybe that has to do with the number that we received for this year.
Yeah, that 54,000 is a larger figure than I think we're used to. 57,000, let me see, last year was only 20. And 4,400, and this is DEA, and this is Treasury for the border, and then this is other, which would be more like local. sheriff.
Usually the DA's office.
Yeah, and you can see we bumped really big on this one. Brought the balance from 150,000 to 200,000 in the account. So yeah, that's a bigger one than we've seen in a while.
Chief, I just wanted to go back real quickly about the travel again.
Yeah.
Just another question. When someone does that, their time starts when they leave to go to the airport, and then by the time they get back? I guess I'm just kind of curious, and does it usually occur during, would 8 hours be during their count towards their normal working shift?
So I would say that our officers are pretty reasonable when it comes to it, that, because it's not a work day, that in a
Normal
week,
work
they'll evaluate, if I was waiting at the airport and the travel,
I mean, I'm not trying to nickel and dime.
No, I
I'm
mean,
just-
it's a valid,
I'm just curious
it's a
as
valid
to.
question. It's not I'm going to the airport at 2 a.m., but I work 8 to 4, so this is all overtime. It's not done that way.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, Chief Lawless.
All right, I'll go right over the narrative that I submitted also. 2020, our positives, do we have sufficient funding to maintain our current operations and levels of service, which is good. Our union contract is current. We all know that has been a big hammer hanging over us as far as financially, so that's taken care of. And we should not see, it should stay stable due to no multi-year pay increases. That's why you will see on the 1100 account there was a bump. That was for 5, 6, 7 years. The other positive that we're seeing is our ambulance revenue. The changes that we put in place for the last 2 years is starting to show some real positive impact on our budget. The negative, we're close, so if something unforeseen comes up, we don't have any control over it. One of them was buildings and grounds. You'll see that was exceeded. We had a major sewer line break, and the repair to that was over $6,000 for just one repair. That was not something that we can anticipate. So that's there. Like I said, our regular pay is up 11% due to contractual raises. The overtime is down. We have made further adjustments to that, working on some operational changes that I've done, and that some in the future that are gonna come up. I think that we can meet our goal that was set forth last night of 266.
So last night we, as part of our conversation, we discussed ways in which we could bring down overtime. And so we settled on a figure of 266,000.
And we're gonna shoot for that and even try to do better. So as
Which
best we can
is-
with maintaining our services.
Which is significantly below the 387 that was.
Right, and this year we're tracking lower due to some operational changes that were done. You would see more now coming up. We just completed, one of them was a driver academy. We just put 3 firefighters through that are now certified to drive the trucks. That's always an issue, having qualified people to drive a vehicle. We can't just take anybody and throw them in it. So creating an academy that meets all of the qualifications, and we're pushing it through. We're gonna be doing that every 6 months. So that way I will have an abundance of drivers, and that causes you not to call in overtime. That's just because you've got qualified people on shift. Those are just operational changes that we've done. Materials and supplies are up substantially. That's due to Department of Health came in and did an audit of CVPH. Prior, all of our EMS supplies were given to us from CVPH, everybody in the area. There's a law called the Home Rule Law. Doesn't affect us up here, but we have to follow the same law. It's if you have 3 different hospitals that you could transport to, you would transport the one that's giving you free material. And they don't allow that, so that it's level playing field when you get into metropolitan areas. That's what that increase is for. Our revenue, our EMS revenue was budgeted for 725. Rich and I came up with that number. We did it through using some historical data for last year. We are on track now to be well over 800,000, right, Rich?
It's currently at 766.
And we still have 2 months left of revenue to come in, and we're
Yep.
generating, on average, 70 to 75,000 a month in revenue.
And our expenditures against this is about 44,000 through the end of September for commissions.
So,
So we're down at about 722.
right. And we're gonna revisit that again. We're keep looking for efficiencies. It's a constant process of working on, are there things that we can do to make sure that we can recoup our monies the best that we can through documentation, QA, QI, making sure that proper skills are being maintained. We're also, we're gonna meet with our billing person and look at rate increases again, minimal, but we're gonna keep moving that bar. We aren't gonna let it happen before where we went 10 or 12 years without doing an increase. We're gonna stay on par with other agencies in the area.
Yeah, I think charging the correct rates, the market rates have made a big, big difference.
Right.
obviously.
Right.
You see, last year was only 676 and a half for the year, but that was.
That was only about 6 months with the adjusted rates, I believe. Did we do
2 months. Yeah, we did it in October.
October?
So it's been a year.
It's been a year, okay.
Right.
I thought we did it in October of 17, and it was all of 18.
We did it all as,
But the problem I had in 18 was that I had all these reserves from that accounting nightmare that was created, and I had to offset it against the
Right.
revenue. But that's all taken care of, that's all done.
right,
The collections were still strong in 18, and you can see they're even stronger in 19.
right.
They're consistent year to year, but it's just that we had a couple, I think about 130,000 I had to dump in there because of bad accounting practices with trying to track the ambulance revenue based on year by reserve. It was just a nightmare that was created. And
Yeah,
so
we were-
anyway,
What about the number of calls compared from year to year?
It's increasing.
It's increasing, which would also attribute to the higher revenue.
Yes, there's multiple things where it's increasing, and that's why we're looking at staffing a second ambulance. We're in conversations with the union on that. That would be a positive for us to generate more revenue. The key with that is to not increase our expenses significant to the revenue. We want to see a positive impact on the budget. We also want to make sure that we're delivering the best service that we can. And how do we do that? That's something that we're working on.
the contract service fees for those ambulance collections, billings rather, are in this line item. Contract services.
The budget allows for personnel levels to maintain where we are operational efficient and have succession planning. One of the things you're gonna see is that I've got 12 people that are 6 people that are eligible to retire today, and then coming up in the next year. In 2021, I'll have 12. And it's a lot like police in that we can't just take anybody and put them in and not have them sufficiently trained, because not only do they go to the fire academy, once they come out of there, then we have to do EMS. Then we have to have them ride with somebody. I can't take somebody that's just brand new out of an academy and an EMT class and put them on an ambulance. We want to have them partnered, do OJT, ride along. So there's a process, approximately a year, even longer, till they know what they're doing.
So have your 6 eligible people indicated whether or not they're actually going to?
No, not yet. I do in 2021, I know of 3 that have plans to go. The thing is, in 2 weeks, I could have notices come in that they're retiring. They don't have to give any long-term notice. It would be nice. But situations change with people on personal levels, and they decide they want to go do something else, and they're eligible to move on, they do.
How current is the list for,
It just came out. We had, there was a delay in the list. The list expired in June. We were supposed to, it expired in June. The test was in April. We were supposed to have our results in July. I was anticipating putting people into an academy at that time to account for the succession planning. And the problem is, there was a holdup at the state level. There was something that went wrong with the test. We didn't get the results back till August 29th, and the last residential academy was September 2nd. There's no way that I can vet proper candidates, gear, anything in that amount of time, and background checks through with the police. So our hands were tied with that.
When's your
When
next
would be the-
academy?
February 2nd in Montour.
Montauk?
Montour.
Oh.
It's out in the western part of the state, it's a state fire academy. We go between there and one in Utica.
When's the next one after that, after
The
February?
next one after that will be, there's 2 that are starting in February.
And then after that, when-
Would be August. We're currently down,
so every 6 months,
what's that?
every 6 months, give or take.
Yeah, and it depends. Those are the ones that are the closest, so those are the ones I've been looking at. You know, that's something that we're gonna need to get people moving and get them into.
Okay, do we want to go over any of the expenses and revenues and things?
Well, budgeted for 2020 for revenue, we're gonna look at $880,000 in ambulance revenue. We think that that's a sustainable number.
And now, is that number contingent on staffing another ambulance?
No.
Or just staying as is?
Staying out, if I staffed another ambulance, I would be, I think I would tip over $1 million, get over $1 million in revenue.
Okay.
So that's what we're striving for.
It'd be well over $1 million if you,
Sounds like they're
We
gonna
still
make
do
that
it.
amount this year.
Yes. The thing is, we want to be conservative in our estimates. I don't want to come and tell you that I can do $1 million and then fall short. That's why we did the 725 in our first year. We wanted to have historical data behind us before we made further projections.
now, Chief, within the city with EMS, if there's a call that comes in to 911 and it is in the city, does your ambulance get first priority to
Yes.
respond to the call?
Yes.
And if they're busy, then it goes to CVPH?
Then it'll go to CVPH. And the CVPH ambulances, there's one at CVPH and there's one in Beekmantown. If the one at CVPH has gone out, they cover the town of Plattsburgh. If that goes out, the ambulance is coming from Beekmantown. That's why you will see fire engines that go and respond to EMS calls. All of our members are trained and our engines are staffed for emergency responses. So they will go and initiate patient care and stabilize a patient until the transport ambulance gets there. So that way there is no delay in medical care for us.
I guess just your best guess, would you be able to say, tell me how many times roughly you would be on a call where a second call could possibly come in that would have to go to CVPH because you're unable to answer
Today?
that call?
The last year,
Yeah.
roughly 600.
600 calls
600
that
calls,
came in
right.
when you're on a call?
Right. We're tracking right now to, we'll be close to 3,000 calls of an ambulance, which is higher than an industry standard, what they would like for one crew running that many. Last week, the crew ran 18 calls in a day. So that's a lot of calls, especially when you're doing extensive medical. So that's why we're trying to spread it out a little bit. But it's a work in progress, and hopefully we'll get there. I think that it's positive so far.
Does anybody have any questions?
I ran another report, I found out we do have a Munis link on here, so I ran the other report that compares the budgets that we developed so far for 2020. This column shows you the actual results, or no, excuse me, this shows you the revised budget for 18, revised budget for 19, and then here's what was requested by Scott. Here's how it was adjusted for the mayor's budget, and here's how it's been further adjusted so far for the council level budget. So you can see which line items have been changed along the way. It's gone from 3,358,500 and to 3,224,500.
Right.
So $134,000
Right.
reduction.
We're doing good. Our cost compared to other municipalities in the area is on par. We're not the most expensive per assessed thousand, so that's a positive thing with the service that you're
Mhm.
getting.
That's very good. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. So, I'm just going to make a motion
Did we
to,
get a building inspector?
oh, building inspector.
No, he's the 31st.
Yeah, you're going next week. All right, so,
I'll make a motion to move items 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 4, and 5 to the regular meeting agenda.
I'll second that.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
Okay. Item 3, old business. I do have some old business, actually. It's been lingering here since, I think, August. And that has to do with some reports that were indicated when we approved the Plattsburgh Housing Authority officer and the resource officer. There were some reports that were supposed to come with each of these. And I asked for them, and we haven't seen them, so I was wondering what the
The housing
status was.
authority's on the agenda.
Oh, is it on there?
Supplied that
Oh,
one, I
okay.
indicated that I'm still working on this.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. I must have missed that. Okay. Any other old business?
I have none.
Okay. Any new business? I don't have any new business. Well, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
And you had
So-
no questions for Joe while he's here?
Do we have questions for I don't. Do you?
No.
Oh, I do have a question. Would you mind coming to the microphone? Now that I'm thinking of this just now. There's been a flurry of coverage in the news and social media and the newspaper regarding you're both here, regarding this cat and dog, this animal control law that we passed. And I'm wondering if you've received any complaints from either code enforcement or police for cats on properties and so on. I don't know if that's information that you could recall or you have received complaints, and how were they resolved?
I'd be drawing from my memory, I glanced at it today. It was not a straightforward issue from what I recall,
Was it just one call so far that you know
that
of?
I was able to search it.
Okay,
Had to do with a complaint that was made about what appeared to be a feral colony on someone's property. Our officers went out to investigate. It would turn out that the person whose property it was not the owner of the cats, did not feed the cats, was just providing a space.
mm-hmm,
Was educated on the law as it was written. This person made notification to the people that were taking care of the colony. And they came down to the station we provided them with a copy of the law to just explain what it was.
mm-hmm,
The resolution was the person was not going to feed them on their property.
The owners of the property were not gonna feed the cats.
So the colony is on the property, and they claim they don't feed the cats on the property.
Correct.
So
That-
others are.
The
Doesn't
owner,
make
the
sense.
owner, the owners of the property are not feeding the cats.
Correct.
But they're
Others
giving
are-
permission to allow others to feed,
Correct.
Oh,
which is fine.
oh,
Okay.
That's a non-issue.
It's a little convoluted,
I mean, that's a non-issue. I mean, if the owner gives, if the owner is giving permission, there's no problem with that.
So
I don't
what
think- if
happened?
the
It
owner
was
is giving
just hand over
permission,
the
the property
information,
owner?
and there was no fine or fee or nothing, okay. That came to my attention, that case that you just referenced, came to my attention, I was emailed by a woman who doesn't live here, and so I got it kind of vicariously, so now I'm glad I'm hearing it directly from you, so I appreciate it. So that was mostly what I wanted to know, because I didn't know if you had been called or you had been called.
My office has actually gotten two complaints as well. One was about a cat colony, not the same one,
Okay,
making us aware, if we weren't aware, that there was a cat colony. And we're looking into that. Again, it seems exactly like a cat colony is on the property. The property owner is not feeding the cats. Somebody else is.
okay.
And then we've got another isolated incident of a specific property. We're keeping an eye on that. We've only seen one cat and there's no food out, so.
that doesn't make any sense to me, that you would shelter cats on your property and then say, "Yeah, I'm not feeding these cats, somebody else is, I don't know who is." I mean, that just doesn't, it's not logical.
People are
Why-
not
very
logical,
often you're not logical.
so, okay.
People do crazy
If you could
things.
keep us updated on that, that would be really great, because it's been in the news, there's been a flurry of
Yeah, sure.
conversation about it, we're being inundated on the council, because there is a ton of misinformation out there. So I would appreciate it if you could just keep us
In the
informed.
cat colony one that we have, we're making sure the owner is aware and that they're aware of what the law says.
Okay. Okay.
I just had one comment for
Oh, yeah, sure.
Mr. McMahon. I saw your 4 photos of some success you've made with some of the built properties and getting the improvements done. I want to tell you, I really appreciate that. And I've
Thank you.
heard
Mhm.
comments.
Appreciate it.
It's been-
I've noticed a difference in the Center City area, I believe.
Yeah, we're working hard and we're getting a lot of cooperation as well.
And I also want to add that I received a call this weekend reporting some, what was thought to be illegal dumping around the berm area of the Underwood Park, and I really do appreciate the fact that you guys got on that right away and went out and investigated.
Very good, thank you.
So, I don't have time, I don't know if you do, I don't have time to meet with you before our meeting next Thursday, where you're going to be giving your budget presentation. So, as soon as you're able to send us a narrative, that would be really great. And
Okay.
then we can just rely on the pre-meeting, I think, next week. Is that
Sure.
okay
I'm
with
fine,
you?
yeah.
Because I just don't have the time next
That's
week
fine.
to try
I
and
don't,
meet with
I
you.
don't see a lot of issues.
Anybody else have anything for Supervisor McMahon? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, guys.
Any other new business? I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes?
Mayor Reed?
Yes. We now have a few minutes to have a working session of any additional items that you'd like to talk about
Chief.
tonight.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You've moved a number of
I
items.
said, no, I said, thanks, Chiefs.
You've moved a number of items to the agenda. Is there any additional discussion you'd like to have on any agenda items tonight?
Yeah, could we talk a little bit about item number 1, since Matt is here? He's referenced in the item.
Item number
Seven,
A.
7A?
7A?
Oops, I'm
7A?
sorry, I'm reading from my agenda. Sorry. Yes.
Matt, do you want to come forward? They want to talk to you about 7A a little bit.
Right, it's the same one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Oh, man.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, Matt.
Just wondering if you could give us some information on 7A from the agenda. What it is and what's going to be happening with that.
Sure. 7, okay. There was a considerable remediation completed on what is known as the Durkee Street parking lot. That was completed in 2007. As part of that remediation, there were requirements based on the classification of the site for the city to perform ongoing monitoring services. That essentially includes the filing of an annual report, which CT Mail normally prepares for us. They take samples from the multiple groundwater sampling wells on the site to determine the level of any contaminants listed or in the water. They send that off for testing and submit an annual report to DEC. For the past several years, those groundwater monitoring well reports have shown a consistently decreasing level of pollutants, and they are now below the point and have been below the point for a consecutive number of years, whereby DEC has given the city permission to decommission those monitoring wells. Now, it's important to understand that that does not absolve the city of its continuing obligation to monitor the site. So we will still be responsible for filing that annual report, but it will be moderately less expensive than it has been in the past because those reports will no longer include the testing requirements that come along with the groundwater monitoring. So we got the sign off from DEC to decommission the wells a few months ago. CT Mail has been putting together a proposal and speaking to drilling companies about the cost of doing that. They got me a final proposal last week in the total amount of $6,815. That includes not only the decommissioning of the wells, but also the necessary regulatory filings with DEC so that they are aware that those wells have been officially decommissioned.
Okay.
That's pretty
Any other questions?
clear, crystal clear,
Okay,
just like the water.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Charged to the parking fund.
I'm sorry?
That would get charged to the parking fund. The $6,815.
Oh, that's right, that does get charged to the parking fund.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Contract services in the park.
Yep.
Any other items that you'd like to have the luxury of having some extended discussion over? Hearing none, perhaps I can ask you for any committee reports. You've got the regular package of reports in your council package this week. Let's begin with governance strategy and city operations. Councilor Armstrong.
Yes, Councilor McFarland and the mayor and I had a little conference and continuing to put together our ideas for a report that will be coming to you. I have requested, though, that something be omitted in terms of recreation, and that is the park capital budget and regular budget be included for our examination. And we're gonna be meeting Patrick, the mayor, and I on Monday, and we'll include that in our discussion. Let me see. I can't think of anything right now. I'll add in council reports if I can remember.
And we did send off the contract for OpenGov, and we've got an intern who's begun to work with Richard Marks on the transition of OpenGov. And I've invited the governance committee who's been spearheading that effort to meet the intern on Tuesday at 10 a.m. City infrastructure, Councilor Moore?
Well, I've had comments about, and I guess this time of year, it keeps coming up, but, and then we forget about it, but, you know, as far as for the street sweeping and the clearing of leaves, you know, the sweeper weaving in and out of parked cars doesn't really cut it. It would be much more effective, and I don't have a good answer at this point. but it would be great if we could have certain sections where we got the cars off the street for just a day, say, or whatever, so that, you know, this would be more effective. I mean, I have to admit, I see the same thing where, you know, a third of the street gets done, and why do we try to work around all these cars? It would be very easy if we could. I don't have a good answer though, and I will look into that with Counselor Gibbs, and we'll try to come up with something where maybe we could make it a little more effective.
Yeah, that would be good.
that'd be
Along the
great.
same lines, I actually this week, 3 times, saw someone blowing leaves from their lawn out onto the street, which,
I don't think
as
that's
a,
legal.
huh?
I don't think that's legal.
No, as a reminder, it's not to the,
Just like you can't
But it's
blow
the
your
latest
grass out.
technology, come on.
Thank you. Finance and Budget, Counselor Kelly?
Oh, just like to go over the remaining budget sessions for this year. We have public safety is gonna spill over into next week.
Mhm.
So you guys are on deck for next week. And also the public library. So if we could ask Ann to provide us her
yeah,
budget.
she has a narrative prepared.
Okay, good.
Good.
Good. And then on the 7th is capital budget and community development. So Councilor Armstrong will be
And we'll give our recommendations for the rec
for
complex.
rec complex as well.
So if Matt could have the narrative earlier in the week for CD, if you haven't already done it, that's fine.
That's the parking fund as well, too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Rochelle, do you anticipate you're gonna have your final recommendations regarding what's gonna
Rec
happen
comp.
with all of it? The crate, the gym?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The city clerk's office is under your committee's
Okay.
purview as well, right?
Oh, I don't wanna forget.
We didn't include
That.
that, but we should. I'm not sure, I don't think they'll have many changes or anything.
Right, I
for
think
us.
we've recently undergone a series of increases in fees, so that's probably not something we'll address this time.
And we've gotten the mayor's budget narrative, so we're good there, so. Then the 14th will be the parking fund, all other departments, and wrap up, and that's the deadline to get recommended changes in for.
He was gonna include parking
Mark.
fund in the CD.
I can do it either way,
Oh.
just let me know.
If that's what you'd like to do, that would be just fine.
Well, let's just say time,
What's that?
time allowing,
Okay.
and if we can't quite get it, then we'll postpone it.
I think city clerk was going to do it on the 14th as well, but as
Okay.
you said, her budget is pretty straightforward.
Right.
She does have a couple of changes to discuss.
So then on the 21st, we'd like to have the final budget resolution and vote.
And we're on
What day is
target,
the
right?
21st?
Yes,
I mean, everybody's,
very much so.
all the
Very much
departments
so.
are
Yeah.
doing what they need.
Doing great. I'd love to see all those narratives on the website as soon as we're done,
Oh, okay.
so the public can take those in as well.
Public safety, Counselor Gibbs.
Well, we just had a regular meeting, and both police and fire did their budget presentations. Supervisor McMahon will finalize his next week. We met for 3 hours last night to work on policy procedure, discuss how we can handle overtime, staffing, and all of that. And I really want to thank both chiefs and the mayor and Councilor Ensel, because it was a grinding session, but we came to some really good conclusions.
In Richard.
And Richard, I'm sorry, Richard.
I was just keeping score.
But I really appreciate it. It was hard work, but it's gonna pay off, and it's going to be what the taxpayers are gonna be happy with too, I think.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Counselor Ensel.
No report. We will be hearing next week from Executive Director LaChapelle with her budget presentation.
And admittedly, Board President Councilor McFarland's not here tonight, but I do hope we can still have a very brief quarterly meeting of the MLD next week, because or the following, next week,
Next
as
week.
it is the 5th Thursday of the month. Okay, well, that's the end of the work session. Let's begin with the meeting of the Common Council tonight. We'll begin with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Armstrong,
Here.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor Gibbs,
Here.
Counselor Renzel,
Here.
Counselor McFarland, Counselor Moore,
Here.
I have no real comments, but to thank you all for the real incredible diligence you're all showing in this budget cycle. Obviously, we all take this task very seriously, and with the level of documentation, the narratives that the department heads are preparing, their willingness to meet with you and truly engage in ways to do things differently, I think it's just been a very rewarding process. It's going to be coming to a culmination within about another 4 weeks, so thank you all for that. Please continue.
resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on October 17th, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending October 23rd, 2019 in the amount of $491,803.06 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You've all offered your various reports. Is there any additional committee reports you'd like to offer this time? Seeing none, resolve the reports as listed are hereby ordered. Received and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Gibbs and second by Councilor Moore. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. There's no correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills ordered by the Common Council for the week ending October 25th, 2019 in the amount of $2,324,808.98 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Are there any members of the public who'd like to please come address the council on any issues on the agenda tonight? There will be another public comment period for general issues at the end of the meeting. Seeing none, please continue.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor be authorized to sign technical services change order number 4.
Make a motion to waive the reading and move the motion.
Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the item itself. And thank you for your narrative, Mr. Miller. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong,
Yes.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor Ensel,
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign an amendment to the professional services agreement between the city of Plattsburgh and KAS Inc. to include project management and third-party air project monitoring in accordance with New York State Industrial Code Rule 56 for the asbestos abatement and demolition of the former Glens Falls National Bank building at 25 Margaret Street. Payment shall be made from the general fund and shall be reimbursed through the city's financial restructuring board grant for parking facilities.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs and second by Councilor Moore. Discussion.
Is there an amount for this yet, or?
Yeah, sorry, that was an oversight on my part. The total amount of the contract is $16,540.
And this, by the way, was also something, a product of the analysis you done very early on. This isn't an unexpected expense or anything like that.
No, we always expect this.
So we should actually add that to the capital project since it's gonna be part of the cost of improving the property and add that FRB as a reimbursement line item for it.
Okay.
So I can do the project resolution for that for next week.
Thank
Just
you.
housekeeping. Nothing really critical.
Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong,
Yes.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor Ensel,
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the police chief is authorized to sign a rental agreement with Robert Guerin to rent the first floor of 79 Margaret Street for the Plattsburgh Police Department substation Transportation with an effective date of November 1st, 2019 through October 31st, 2020 for a monthly rent of $1,200, which will be paid through a state grant that the police department is receiving administered by Clinton County.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Ensel. Discussion?
What is the duration of the grant, Chief? Is it just for 1 year? Is it?
The grant doesn't have a cap in that sense, but in terms of what our lease is going to be, it's at least for a year. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so, I mean, the grant isn't just for a year, but
No,
the
it's-
lease is a year lease.
So this is part of a much larger grant that Clinton County found a valuable use for it in terms of this product.
Thank you.
And I think the receptiveness to help fund that is a testament to Officer Miller's work with this group in supporting their cause and mental health in the downtown also. So I think it very much goes with what you've been trying to accomplish in that building. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes,
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor be authorized to sign a water supply agreement with the town of Plattsburgh regarding tax map parcel 233.6-1-2.1 for a 24-month term ending on October 17, 2021.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion.
Mayor, where is this parcel
Yeah.
of property?
This is that small corner lot, the only footprint that the city actually has in the airport property.
Okay.
As you know, we're preparing to bring services there, but it requires going underneath the railroad, and that process is taking an awful long time.
Right.
So we've asked the town if they'd be willing to service that property in the meantime. Now, as you also know, the city decided to make the investment in that property based on the assumption that a hotel was going in there, and they're still looking for prospects for the hotel. And there's also a multimodal facility that's at that property that's currently unoccupied, but nonetheless, they'd like to maintain services for fire safety and that sort of thing. There is a clause in the agreement, though, that once we are able to bring services to those properties, that we can terminate this agreement.
Not even contingent, there's just at our will, we can terminate within 30 days notice.
So we own the land, but the town provides the water.
Water.
They already
Current.
had water coming to the county airport in general, so they were able to create a spur into that property until we
But-
brought our,
I guess right now, there's nothing
actually using
then
it.
to use the water at this point.
Correct. And we're grateful, of course, with the town for working with us on this.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
yes,
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves one police department employee to attend 2019 Crisis Negotiator Workshop from November 6th through 8th, 2019 in Albany, New York. The total cost will not exceed $466.50, and it will be expensed out of the Asset Forfeiture Fund.
Moved by Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
yes.
Are there any resolutions for initial consideration at this time? Any new business or additional councilor reports?
Oh, yes, Mayor, I just wanted to extend my thanks to the Public Works Department. They've been paving all over the south end this summer, and it's been really nice.
That's great.
I can actually drive soon I'll be able to drive from my house to, say, the mall without hitting a pothole. So I was thinking there used to be a mayor named Jack Terrell, and he got the nickname Tarmac Jack because he paved so many things. things, so we're gonna have to give you a nickname. It's gonna be Tarmac Reed from here on out. If this trend continues.
And as you know, they've got about half a mile of paving to go right in your area on Monday, so we certainly are very appreciative
Right.
of the public who tolerate this work to improve their neighborhoods, and the public who've tolerated the work that we're doing on Protection Avenue right now to improve the value of that street and the shops along it. I know, of course, it's disruptive, but we're making the city better, and we appreciate the contribution from our citizens to allow us to make that happen. Did you? Said you-
No, I decided not to.
Any other new business or council reports? Seeing none, this is an opportunity for the public to please come address the council on any issue of mutual concern.
Rebecca Gang. I wasn't gonna say anything, but listening to you bringing up the feral cat law, I decided I just wanted to let you know and assure you that there are many in the city, including myself, who feel that the feral cat law that you enacted is a very good step in the right direction. For the first time, the city council's made it clear that cats are valued living creatures that deserve care and protection, and not to be left in a situation where they can be harmed by others or be exposed to all the trauma that feral cats are typically exposed to. So I wanted to assure you that even though there's a lot of people who may be complaining to you, that I, among others, really feel that this is a good step in the first direction, a good first step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Any other members of the public, please come address the council? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Move by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Armstrong. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
I didn't think I'd do a good job. But I did meet with the Climate Action Coalition, and they are going to help us with volunteers on the holiday parade. So, yeah.
Cool. Can I ask Richard a question on this one?
No, but I am glad that you had brought up the incident that actually I.
How was your week so
Yeah,
far?
yeah, well, I took the phone call. Remember that was an email, and I made the phone call.
I had a little scheduling crisis there. I was gonna